Here I am. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for attending the talk. My name is Francesco, and today I'm talking from Melbourne. So I would like to begin by acknowledging the Wurundjeri people, traditional custodians of this land from which I'm talking, and I pay my respects to their elders, past and present. And you will see that in my presentation, I actually have learned quite a lot from Aboriginal Australians culture. It's quite impressive how psyllids, of all the species you could guess, actually are intrinsically quite related to Aboriginal culture. So today I'm going through a journey with you through the biodiversity of the Australian psylloidea, and I am just the mere messenger of the work that with Gary, Martin, Melinda, and Justin we have conducted during the past couple of years. So the situation with the Australian psyllid was that the time were quite ripe for a new overall work that could start from the work based from David Ollis, 2004, that went through all the species and genera in Australia. Since then, we went through the description, especially Gary, of a number of genera and species. Some species arrived from overseas, and we went through not one but two major taxonomical reclassification of all the psyllids in 2012 and 2021. So yeah, we were ready for quite a major work, and we can now present you the results we have got. So the psylloidea is the superfamily. It's currently divided into 7 families. Only 6 are present in Australia. That makes quite confusing the situation when you refer to psyllid as psyllids, because Psyllidae is only one of the 7 families. Australia is home to more than 400 described psyllid species, plus an additional few hundreds that are still awaiting description. I think the biodiversity is very well summarized here. You can see that New South Wales is clearly in the podium. 216 species, 61 are endemic to this state, followed by Queensland and South Australia. The situation is quite intriguing to me. You can see that there are a few instances where a couple states or territories are sharing a higher number of species. This is obviously the situation between Queensland and New South Wales, for example. And you can guess that obviously some of the area are of a very similar kind of environment. But the vast majority of instances actually shows the same species being very rarely across multiple states or territory. And actually, of the 427 species for which we could find a distribution, not for all the species, distribution is really known, more than half, 221, are actually limited to a single state or territory. And even then, when we say it's limited to a state, we are probably referring to a very, very small area within this state or territory. Another point that is surely important to mention is that you can see a very low diversity apparently in Northern Territory or Western Australia. But this is almost surely just a case of an understudied kind of fauna, while areas like South Australia or New South Wales have been quite studied. Surely we still need to explore the psyllid diversity in Northern Territories. I'll be very happy to get any fundings to go and study there. On the other hand, especially due to the fact that many Australian plants are used in forestry and as ornamentals worldwide, Australian native psyllids can be found spread worldwide. Up to 77 countries we could find. Mostly New Zealand, of course, it's closer, but also United States, Europe. And the opposite doesn't really happen. We only have 19 non-native psyllid species. That is about the 4.3%. And it's even lower if you consider that 4 of these have been actually introduced as biological control agents. And it compares very weirdly to other similar groups. For example, you have 92.2% of aphids that are non-native in Australia, or 19% of scale insects that are non-native. We're talking about 165, 163 species for aphids and scales, respectively, that are non-native to Australia and are present in the country. while for the psyllids is only 19. So why psyllids are so different? Well, they surely come in many different shapes and colors, as you can see. And a very interesting aspect of the Australian fauna is the production of lerps. Now, lerps are the protective shields that some of the psyllid nymphs make to protect the nymph itself. Just to clarify, it's just the shield, it's not the nymph, and they are edible. So they are rich in sugar and starch, and they are not only edible from birds and insects, but they have been eaten by humans for a very long time. There are reports of a single man taking down, single man and woman, taking down 30 to 40 kilogram of lerps in a single day. This is from this very interesting work from Fast and colleague. I suggest you to read it. Lerps were so important in the culture of Aboriginal Australians that they had a specific part in the calendar and constellation associated with that. The amount of food they could provide was so important that they intrinsically were part of their culture. The very word lerp is actually from a not better identified, unfortunately, but language from the Mallee area here in Victoria, and it's obviously Aboriginal. So they produce food for the ecosystem. They are a fantastic diagnostic character because not only different genera produce different lerps, but different species within the same genus can produce very, very characteristic slurp. And we are not the first one understanding that. The work from Purdy and colleague, they actually found different words from the Gia people referring to different lerps from different trees. So this is surely the first taxonomical record for psyllids, surely in the world, and surely in Australia as well. So we're talking about a very ancient taxonomical classifications. Of course, when you're talking lerps, unfortunately, we have to remember that they can also cause damage. For example, when in high number, they are associated with the Bellminer's dieback on eucalypts especially. So that's obviously they do carry some negative aspects too. But this brings us also to the importance of the link between psyllids and their host plants. In general, we refer to a host plant only as to the plant where a psyllid can actually complete the life cycle. So from eggs to adulthood. And here in Australia, we can actually observe two very interesting aspects. So the first one is the multiple associations of the psyllids from a certain genus, Acacia, and the multiple association of the plant eucalyptus with multiple genera of psyllids. So in Australia, we have, for example, more than 200 species of Acacia, largely undescribed, and they are mostly on Acacia, but also associated with a variety of different plant genera, up to 12 we have counted. This is quite unusual because normally you would have a genus of psyllids associated with a genus of plant. The opposite happens with eucalyptus, which sounds like a superhost, hosting up to 30 different psyllid genera. It's interesting to see how many of these have their own lerps, so they can actually cohabitate on the same plant, but cutting themselves their little niche, for example, on different parts of leaves or even of the stem and or of the fresh growth. It's really interesting. You have a different species, different genera on the same plant, but all under different lerps or in different part of the plant. I have this, sorry. And you can see here the association of eucalyptus that is linked with more than 30 different psyllid genera. And again, this is quite unusual. So is the association of Acacia with so many plant genera. So you can see we have actually a connection between psyllids and 19 plant families and 55 plant genera. It's pretty amazing. They are quite widespread across all the plant tree of life. Finally, very briefly, the economic importance of psyllids. I just want to point out that while we often hear the negative impact, which is the pest association, we also have psyllids used as biological controls. Here in Victoria, for example, we have been finding lately a lot of this Aritinisacani that was released for the control of the French broom. So there are very good chances that if you are around and you try to beat broom, I am very bad with plants. I can't really tell the difference often in the field between Scotch broom or French broom. But if you beat those and psyllids are falling off, very good chances you are looking at the biocontrol. And finally, yes, there are obviously psyllids pests, but Australia is actually in a very good situation. We don't have the Asian citrus psyllid or the African citrus psyllid. And even when international pests have managed to arrive, like in the case of tomato potato psyllid, well, it hasn't been found to carry the Liberibacter pathogen that is the agent mostly of the zebra chips disease. So again, we are not doing bad. Our diversity obviously includes pests, obviously includes species that are a strong nuisance for forestry with the dieback as well. But I strongly think that the whole biodiversity here in Australia is something that we really have to protect and keep studying, because there is so much more that we have still to discover about these tiny little cicadas. So that was me. Thank you very much for listening. I feel I spoke very, very fast. I hope you could understand also.
That was great, Francesco. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Thanks, James.
There doesn't seem to be any questions at the moment. We're running fairly close to time, so I'll just draw the session to a close. And I'd like to thank everyone who participated in the session, from the speakers to the audience. And we now have a 30-minute break. And I invite everyone to come back to the next session in Zoom session 1. It will be chaired by Martin Steinbauer, and the session title is Florivores, Leaf Miners and Other Microherbivores, which I'm looking forward to seeing. So thank you again, everybody, and we'll see you in half an hour.
Thank you.